Eleanor Davis had long forgotten the simple joy of laughter. Her smile had faded away over years filled with endless work and responsibility. As a talented architect, she had built a solid reputation. Her keen insight and dependable expertise won the complete trust of her clients, allowing her career to advance without major hurdles. Yet away from her professional life, her personal world was shaped by tangled family ties that stretched back to her early years. Her parents had always put their own wants first. Her mother, Margaret, craved attention in social groups above everything else, while her father, Harold, poured his energy into gambling and risky investments that were basically just another form of wagering. What united them was poor money management and a total lack of concern for the impact their choices had on others. "Eleanor, you always look so solemn. You need to learn how to have more fun in life," her mother had said to her countless times since she was young. Margaret never saw the line between real enjoyment and reckless spending. If Eleanor raised concerns about family finances, she was brushed off as dull and unexciting, and if she spoke about planning ahead, she was called overly anxious. In contrast, Eleanor's sister Pamela had grown up as the clear favorite of both parents. She had inherited Margaret's good looks and Harold's outgoing charm, making her the perfect child in their view. Pamela received anything she desired, her setbacks were quickly overlooked, and her achievements were praised far beyond reason. She kept living an extravagant lifestyle shielded by her parents. "Pamela is simply living life to the fullest. Why don't you relax and do the same?" they would tell Eleanor, all while secretly covering Pamela's costly credit card charges and the expenses from her errors. In the end, most of that financial weight landed squarely on Eleanor's back. The only family member who truly saw Eleanor for who she was had been her grandmother, Rosalind. With her kind expression and perceptive mind, Rosalind had worried about her son and daughter-in-law's careless handling of money, as well as the unfair way they treated their two granddaughters. "Eleanor, you possess a unique inner power, and one day it will rescue you." Rosalind had repeated this to her since Eleanor turned 10. Her grandmother's home was filled with a calm peace that was missing from her parents' house. The old pieces of furniture and vintage objects were not merely costly, each carried its own history. Eleanor enjoyed sitting beside her grandmother and listening to the origins of every item and the memories tied to it. Items carry spirits, Eleanor. Especially those that have been cherished. Rosalind's advice had shaped Eleanor's approach to architecture in a profound way. When her grandmother died, Eleanor was still studying at university. According to the will, Rosalind's home and many beloved possessions were left in Eleanor's care, but her parents had tried to get rid of most of them, labeling them old and useless. Eleanor fought hard to save her grandmother's treasures, and the blue sapphire necklace known as the Davis family jewel became her most valued item. "One day you will grasp the real worth of this jewel," Rosalind's last words had stayed firmly in Eleanor's mind. After finishing college, Eleanor started at an architecture company and later set up her own practice. During all that time, she had worked to keep family connections alive. She covered their debts whenever they built up again, paid for Pamela's university costs and loans, and even helped with her parents' health expenses. She expected nothing back. She simply hoped to hold onto the idea of family, together with the memories of her grandmother. 3 months earlier, Eleanor had been set to leave on an extended work trip to Europe for a large project that might define her professional path. Even though she felt uneasy, she asked her parents to watch over her house and left. On the phone, her parents had sounded happy and said, "Of course, everything will be okay." Eleanor had intended to sort out her parents' latest debt problems once she returned. Right before departing, she had pressed her grandmother's necklace to her heart and softly said, "I'll be back." Her assignment in the faraway place had gone well. Still, from time to time she felt odd waves of worry, as if her grandmother was sending her a warning. On the plane ride home, Eleanor pictured herself back with her family. She felt a mix of feelings, but she still cared for them. No matter the struggles, she wanted to keep those family links intact. Tired from the long journey, Eleanor relaxed in the back of a taxi. The familiar streets passed by outside the window. Her 3-month absence had made everything look new and fresh to her. The tall elm trees lining Maple Street were starting to show autumn colors, signaling the season's change. "We're almost there," the driver said. Eleanor smiled, enjoying the happiness of returning home. The project had turned out well, with strong praise from the client. Now she could finally relax for a while. She also needed time to have a serious talk about her parents' money troubles. When the taxi pulled up in front of her house, Alina first thought her eyes were playing tricks. "Is this the correct address?" the driver asked. "Yes," Alina replied, stunned. A big for sale sign stood on the grass in front of her house, and below it was the real estate company's name with a sold label already in place. "This has to be some error," she whispered to herself. After paying the driver, she stood there with her heavy suitcase. This was definitely her house. The white two-story colonial-style home she had received from her grandmother was the heart of Alina's world. As she walked toward the front door, she saw that the lock had been replaced. Her key would not turn, her heart started pounding. Pushing down her fear, Alina pulled out her phone and called her mother's number. After 3 rings, Margaret answered in a bright tone. "Oh, Alina, you're back at last. Mom, there's a for sale sign right in front of the house." "What is happening?" Alina tried to stay steady. "Oh yes," Margaret's voice was full of excitement. "We sold the house. We got a nice amount for it. Sorry, you'll need to look for somewhere else to stay." Alina could hardly believe what she heard. "What are you saying? The house belongs to me. There is no way you could have sold it." "Oh, your father managed all the documents. There were some legal papers or whatever. Anyway, it's already sold. The new owners will move in next weekend." Warning bells went off in Alina's mind, and with a shaky voice she asked, "What happened to my things?" "Oh," that Margaret sighed. "We got rid of everything. Your old-style stuff was just taking up space. Those clothes you hadn't worn in ages, that pile of old books, and that container of keepsakes from your grandmother, we cleared it all out." Alina's throat tightened. She remembered the wooden container holding mementos from her grandmother, family pictures, and most important, her grandmother's will. "What about grandmother's necklace?" Alina's voice shook. "Oh, that old piece with the blue stone, of course." Pamela said, "Who would ever wear something like that?" From the other side of the call, Alina could hear Pamela's voice. "Alina, you're back. We had a fantastic party while you were gone. Everyone enjoyed it so much." Alina dropped down onto the front steps. It felt like her whole world had fallen apart in those 3 months. Thinking about the necklace her grandmother had held tight in her final moments, the one known as the Davis family jewel, made her chest ache. "Why?" She could not go on. "You're not upset, are you?" Margaret's voice carried a hint of worry. "You always give us money anyway. We figured you'd get us a new house. Besides, we managed to clear Pamela's debts with the money from selling this house." The memory of the final day with her grandmother appeared in Alina's thoughts. On her deathbed, Rosalind had held her hand, trying to share something. "Protect the Davis house, the truth is." Her grandmother's words had faded away before finishing. "What debts?" Alina asked. "Oh, Pamela lost some on certain investments, and your father's health costs added up." Alina drew in a deep breath. She heard something snap inside her with finality. It was the sound of the family tie she had valued for so many years breaking. "I understand." Her voice was oddly steady. "But don't be sorry for this." "What do you mean?" Margaret laughed. "I didn't expect you to get so mad. You usually let everything go." Alina ended the call without another word. The autumn breeze brushed her face. She stood in front of the house for a long while, this home that had been guarded across 3 generations, this place that her grandmother had treasured until the very end. Tears filled Alina's eyes but dried quickly. "I couldn't guard what needed guarding." As she said this softly, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Deborah, one of Alina's few close friends and also a skilled attorney. "How was Europe? Tell me when you're back." Alina stared at the message. Then slowly she rose to her feet. "This isn't the end," she said quietly but with strong resolve. This was only the start. Deborah Schwartz's law office sat on the 5th floor of an old stone building in the middle of town. When Alina arrived at the front desk, the assistant Janet rose with a surprised expression. "Alina, when did you return?" "Yesterday." Alina showed a weary smile. "Is Deborah free?" "I need to talk about something urgent." Janet must have noticed something in her look because she quickly used the intercom. A short time later, Alina was led into Deborah's office. "It's been 3 months." Deborah stood and gave her a hug, but her face grew serious when she noticed Alina's expression. "What happened?" Alina sat and shared every detail of what had occurred the day before. Deborah listened without interrupting, sometimes writing notes, sometimes frowning. "So your parents sold your house without your approval and got rid of all your possessions." Deborah summed up the details. "But the house was listed in your name, right?" "It was given to me in my grandmother's will." Alina nodded. "But my mother said your father handled all the documents. Apparently there were some legal papers." Deborah considered it carefully. "Moving property ownership needs proper steps. It should not be possible without your approval." She started typing on her computer. Let's look at the property records. A few minutes later, her face shifted. Alina, according to the property records, ownership changed from you to your parents years ago. What? Alina spoke louder. That's impossible. I never approved anything. Here's the record. Deborah turned the screen toward her. There's a signature too. Alina looked closely at the screen. There was indeed a signature, but it was clearly not hers. This is a fake, she said in a shaking voice. Deborah nodded quietly. That's very probable. Do you have a copy of your grandmother's will? Alina made a pained expression. I kept it in the it might still be located, Deborah said calmly. First, we need to show the false transfer of ownership. We need solid proof on our side, but how? Alina looked confused. Let's reach out to the attorney who managed your grandmother's will. They should have a copy. Deborah picked up the phone. And we also need to follow what happened to your possessions. From that day, Alina's court fight started. With Deborah's support, she located the law office that had managed her grandmother Rosalind's will. However, they faced another obstacle there. I'm sorry, but some of our records were destroyed in a fire 5 years ago, the older attorney Morris said. Mrs. Davis's will was among them. Deborah and Alina looked at each other. It was a coincidence that felt too convenient. Are there any other records? Deborah asked. Morris thought for a moment. Actually, he said carefully, Mrs. Rosalind was a very careful person. She should have also left a copy of her will with a notary public. Following this clue, the two started a fresh search. At the same time, Alina was also hunting for her possessions that had supposedly been discarded. You should contact local antique sellers and donation centers, Deborah suggested. If your parents got rid of your items, there should be some signs somewhere. Alina made calls deep into the night every evening. She reached out to dozens of stores and groups, describing her treasured items over and over. She described her grandmother's necklace with special care. It's a blue sapphire framed by silver details. The initials RDE are carved on the back. On the third night, an unexpected call arrived. Is this Alina Davis? It was an unfamiliar man's voice. I'm Martin Greenberg, owner of Treasures of the Past, an antique store. Some of the items you're searching for might have come to our shop. The next morning, Alina went to the antique store with Deborah. The white-haired owner brought a large cardboard box from the storage area. A middle-aged man and a young woman brought these in last week. They said they were old items they no longer wanted. Alina opened the box and examined what was inside. Inside were her old photo albums, her grandmother's memory box, and journals from her school years. I decided most of them had little value, so I didn't purchase them, Martin went on, but I thought it would be a waste to toss them, so I held on to them. Then I saw your notice. Thank you so much. Alina felt tears come. However, the most important blue sapphire necklace was not there. In the box, Alina found her grandmother's jewelry container. There was no key, but she opened it using a thin tool. Inside, along with old pictures, was an envelope. This is as Alina opened the envelope with unsteady hands, she found a letter written in her grandmother's handwriting and copies of official papers. Dear Alina, when you read this letter, you may be dealing with troubles. This house and all the belongings are yours alone. No matter what Harold and Margaret claim, this is the truth. The attached papers are proof I believe in your power. With love, Rosalind. Deborah reviewed the papers and her eyes brightened. This is key evidence. It's a proper ownership transfer certificate dated before the fake papers. Alina picked up a photo of her grandmother. Rosalind's wise gaze seemed to still be looking after her. She knew that someday my parents might try something like this, Deborah said in a determined tone. Now let's go to the next stage. We'll cancel the fake sale and recover your house. Alina nodded quietly. Her fight had only just started, but now she had a message from her grandmother and papers proving the facts. Grandma Rosalind, I will guard your house, Alina promised in her heart. This is the notice from the court. Deborah gave Alina the paper. The house sale agreement has been ruled as based on a false transfer of ownership and has been legally canceled. Alina looked out the office window. Autumn had grown stronger and the street trees were now shades of red and yellow. It had taken over a month for the court's ruling to come. During that time, she had kept staying in a hotel, spending her days collecting pieces of her lost history. Will the buyer be paid for losses? Alina asked with concern. You don't need to pay, Deborah shook her head. The court has decided that the real estate agent involved in the false deal and your father, who supposedly made the fake documents, will take the responsibility. Alina was speechless. She did not want to hold anger toward her father, however. The The fact that he had faked his own daughter's signature left a lasting hurt in her heart. And this too, Deborah handed over an envelope, the keys to your house. From today, you can officially go back to your home. Alina took the keys and felt their heaviness. These were not just house keys, they were a symbol of taking back her life. Thank you, Deborah. She hugged her friend. Without you, I would surely have. You're a strong woman, Alina. Deborah held her shoulder firmly. Your grandmother knew that too, I suppose. As Alina left the office, her cell phone rang. Her mother's name showed on the screen. She took a deep breath and answered. Alina, Margaret's voice was upset. What have you done? We received a notice from the court. I can't believe the house sale has been canceled. The buyers were already getting ready to move in. Alina replied in a steady voice, Mom, that house was in my name. The court has confirmed that Dad faked my signature to change ownership. That's ridiculous. Margaret's voice shook. Harold, are you hearing what Alina is saying? From the other end of the phone, her father's voice could be heard. Alina, let's discuss this. Selling your house without approval was wrong, but we had our reasons. What reasons? Alina pressed. Reasons to throw away all my important memories too. After a short pause, her father said in a quiet voice, we needed the money. Pamela, she's built up big debts. And my health costs have gotten high too. Why didn't you tell me? Sadness mixed in Alina's voice. I've always helped you, haven't I? You were away on work. Margaret started making excuses. And besides, you always criticize us. Criticize you, Alina said in disbelief. When have I ever criticized you? She stopped her words. She realized there was no use in debating. Anyway, the house has been returned to me, she said firmly. I'm on my way to get it now. But what will we do? Margaret's voice sounded like she was about to cry. We've already used the money from the sale. Alina stayed quiet for a moment. Before my trip, I was planning to handle Dad's health bills and your debts, but now it will take time to rebuild trust. After ending the call, Alina took a taxi to her house. When the driver left her there, she paused in front of the entrance. The for sale sign was still up, but the sold label had been taken off. Putting the key in and opening the door, she found the house bare. The furniture had been sold, and the photos that had been on the walls were missing. Alina slowly walked through the rooms, feeling the emptiness but slowly finding her balance again. My home, she whispered. Suddenly the doorbell sounded. When Alina opened it, her sister Pamela was standing there. Her eyes were red and her makeup was smeared. May I come in? Pamela asked in a quiet voice. Alina silently moved aside. Pamela stepped into the living room and looked around at the empty space. I'm sorry, she said suddenly, for getting rid of your things, for what I said on the phone, for everything. Alina said nothing. Our parents were really struggling, Pamela continued. I lost a lot of money at the casino and Dad's heart operation was costly. She started to cry, but that's no excuse, is it? Alina finally spoke. What happened to grandmother's necklace? Pamela looked down. I sold it to a fancy jewelry store. Pain struck Alina's chest. The most treasured keepsake from Grandma Rosalind, the necklace called the Davis family jewel. Her grandmother's last words echoed in her ears once more. What's the name of the jewelry store? Alina quietly asked. Green's Jewelry, Pamela answered in a soft voice. It might have been sold already. Alina walked silently to the window. The setting sun was coloring the western sky red. There's one more thing I want to say. Pamela came closer to her. Our parents said they might take you to court over this, but I'll stop them. Alina turned around. Why? You've done more than enough for us. Tears shone in Pamela's eyes. I should have understood it sooner. That night, Alina slept on a mattress placed on the floor. In the empty house, she felt an odd calm. From tomorrow, she would purchase new furniture and slowly rebuild her home. The next morning, she went to Green's Jewelry. After hearing her story, the owner, Joseph Green, shook his head in regret. That necklace was sold to a collector last week. It brought a high price because it was such an unusual sapphire. Alina's hopes fell. However, Joseph went on, but let me speak with the buyer if I explain the situation. 3 days later, Joseph reached out to her. The collector had understood the situation and agreed to give back the necklace. The only condition was a full refund of the purchase price. Alina agreed right away. On the day she received the necklace, Alina stood before her grandmother's photograph and held the blue sapphire to her heart. Grandma Rosalind, I was able to guard your house. Tears fell down her cheeks. They were not tears of sadness, but of relief. Through this experience, Alina had thought again about the real meaning of family. Blood connections matter, but they are not the only ties. Trust, respect, and looking out for each other. Without these, the word family loses its meaning. Alina put on the necklace and enjoyed the morning sunlight coming through the window. She was prepared to move quietly into the new life that was starting. It might be a path with difficulties, but she was no longer by herself. A year later in spring, the white colonial house on Maple Street had changed completely. Elinor had used her abilities as an architect to update her grandmother's house, turning the first floor into her own architectural office. In the large, bright space, her design sketches and models were shown, and young, hopeful architects came and went. "Your next client is at 2, Elinor." Her assistant Kate gave her the schedule. Elinor nodded and looked out the window. The roses her grandmother had loved were starting to bloom beautifully again this year. Her life had taken a new path. The creation of the Rosalind Foundation was a big change for her. It was a small foundation Elinor started to help people who, like herself, had lost important keepsakes. Deborah the attorney also joined, offering legal help. "We had 3 new requests this week," Deborah reported at last week's meeting, all in similar situations. Improper disposal of property by family members. Over the past year, Elinor had met many people and learned that her experience was not unusual, and those meetings had given her a new family. Support group meetings held every month at her house were filled with kind talks and laughter. The situation with her parents and sister had shifted a lot. Harold and Margaret were made responsible for the false transaction and had to pay a large amount in compensation. Their fancy way of living ended, and all support disappeared when her financial situation changed. All support disappeared when her financial situation changed. 3 months ago, Margaret called. "Elinor, would you come for Christmas dinner?" Her mother's voice had lost its old confidence. "We all want to see you." Elinor said no, the hurts had not healed yet. However, last week she sent a small present to her parents' apartment. It was a photograph of her grandmother and a brief note, "Someday we may be able to talk again." It was not full forgiveness, but it was a small start. Today, Elinor had a special plan. From the evening, she was set to begin a new project with the members of the Rosalind Foundation to look for lost keepsakes. They would create a system to watch the internet, antique sellers, and auction sites. On her desk lay the blue sapphire necklace. Elinor picked it up and held it up to the light. "A new beginning," she whispered. On the room's bookshelf, her grandmother's photo albums, which she had recovered, were carefully placed. Elinor opened one and looked at the young Rosalind's smile. Beginnings and endings are always in our own choices. Outside the window, the spring breeze brought new life. Elinor smiled and placed the necklace around her neck. Her journey was still going on.